Hello and welcome to Hammer's Chat End of Season Review Part 1. In this episode, we'll be giving you our individual performance of the season, our disappointing part of the season, our sign of the season, our assessment of Bilic. I'll be joined by the faces you've seen on the channel all season. But before we get stuck into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel by hitting our logo below. Drop your answers below to the 4 questions. There'll be a reminder of the questions at the end and throughout. We want to know your opinions. But anyway, let's get stuck into it, starting with the individual performance of the season.
I mean, it's tough to break it down, really. I'd say any of James Collins' performances in the final last few games of the season, but it would have to be against Tottenham, I think.
It was unbelievable. He got his head in everything, he's blocking everything.
Given how badly we were, for him to almost seemingly single-handedly turn that defence around, he's just unbelievable.
He was just dogged, he led from the back, he wore his heart on his sleeve, and you could just see how much that victory just meant to him as he went out to embrace the fans, and you could just see the claret and blue blood that goes through his veins.
He was phenomenal, so for me, with Ginge.
My individual performance of the season would have to be for Antonio against Palace.
I and a few others on this channel have been quite critical of his passing and crossing, or a lack of both.
I think he was absolutely fantastic that game. The 3 assists that he had for the game were fantastic.
And he set up that goal for Andy Carroll. That sort of performance showed what Antonio was all about for me.
My individual performance of the season was Cheku Kiete against Domzale. It was my first game at the Olympic Stadium. He scored 2 goals, we won 3-0. I thought things will never get any better than this. What a great start. Well, do you know what? How right I was. Things didn't get any better. They got a lot worse.
The most disappointing thing of the season for me would be, yet again, we haven't won a cup. We was close, was it quarters? Yeah, most disappointing for me had to be no silverware again. We're never going to win the league. And silverware is all we can really hope for.
I think the biggest disappointment for me has definitely been where we haven't been able to push on from last season, where we had the highs of reaching 7th, the promises that were given to us in part and parcel of going to the Olympic Stadium, saying, you know, this will push us to the next level. The one thing I can only hope from this disappointment is that the board have realised they've made a mistake and dropped the ball. But one part of making mistakes is how you learn from it. And if I can turn any sort of negative into a positive, it's just the disappointment of the unfulfilled promises can now be turned into a positive with the board, putting with their money where their mouth is, and just see where this next season takes us.
My disappointment of the season is our board's continuing inability to admit their own faults. We continuously seem to be making the same mistakes. We continuously seem to be blaming things that aren't the fatal flaws of the club. And until the owners and the board find the ability to look within themselves and find out what they're doing wrong, as opposed to looking at everyone else and pointing fingers, then we're just left to continuously make the same mistakes over and over again and never progress until they eventually sell, if they ever do.
The biggest disappointment of the season for me would have to be the transfer market. It was the biggest in the club's history and it fell so far short. We could have ended up, spending our money on useful players, whether it would be paying an extra couple of million and actually trying to land someone like Lacazette or Batshuayi, but instead we opted for 3 transfers and people that have just not fit in and not gelled with the squad properly. Hopefully this summer won't be the same.
My disappointment of the season is actually the London Stadium, and in particular the stewards. I felt the stewards has ruined a lot of match experiences at the stadium. It's put a lot of fans off going back next season. It's sort of the pinnacle of what was lies from the board, or misleading at the very best. We got told it would be X, Y, Z, and we've turned up and it's actually A, B, C. We didn't sign up for A, B, C. We signed up for X, Y, Z. We weren't given that.
Disappointment of the season would have to be Tottenham away, trudging all the way up there, dodging bottles and coins to get in there. Didn't fancy our chances, but actually we were in the game, we were close to winning, and somehow we managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Tottenham ended up winning, absolutely gutted. Definitely my disappointment of the season.
It's been the best of a bad bunch.
I was very close to saying Ayew. I think if he had a few more games of the season to go, I think he might have just picked it if he got on the score sheet a little bit more. But it's going to be Masuaku for me.
Never thought we'd get anybody as good as Cresswell at left back.
But essentially, that's what we've done.
Very, very technically good.
For 6 million as well, he's very young, bargain.
I mean, if we're looking statistically wise, I know Edmilson Fernandez picked up the Hammers Young Player of the Year at the Player Awards.
He's been a cut above any of the other players that we bought this season.
For the price we got him for, I think he's just below 6 million quid.
He seems to be a gem that was on I knew basically next to nothing when he turned up, and yet every time he's been on the pitch, he's been impressive.
and the amount of good performances he's put in for us.
And in a season where everyone has continuously been terrible, that's a hell of an achievement for a young player to make.
At times when he's played in behind the striker, he's been absolutely fantastic. His creativity and his passing ability is second to none.
We think about the wing-back role he played against Chelsea, for example. That's not even his position, and yet he destroyed it in that game.
And at only a young age, he's got an exciting future ahead of him.
Fernandes has been the best signing this season for me.
When Fagoli's been good, he's been very good. But when he's been bad, he's been bad. But if I just had to boil it down, he's probably been the best out of the lot, to be honest with you, in terms of assists created and goals in comparison to the other players that we've brought in. I mean, Ayu's come in, but he hasn't really had the same amount of opportunities. He got injured from the start and went to the African Cup of Nations, so I don't want to give it to him. I don't feel that would be quite right, where Fagoli has stake to claim, got in and out of the team, but when he's turned up, he's been excellent.
My assessment of Bilic this year would be he's done all right.
Ended up, getting us to a mid-table position, which was really good at the end when all's said and done.
Obviously, it's never going to be easy coming off the back of getting 7th the year before, the expectations of everybody. I think none of us could have expected the year that we've had, what with Dimitri Payet leaving.
The stadium transition is going to be difficult for any manager.
He was let down in the transfer window. He's contributed to that as well, of course, but it wasn't all he was doing.
He's had to deal with a lot of injuries.
He's not been in the greatest of health himself. Stories about his job from as early as December, even after the season finished, there was rumours about him still getting sacked. The working conditions for Bilic haven't been great, but he's made a lot of errors himself.
Tactically, he's been quite naive.
His substitutions in games at times and his tactics are questionable. It's a bit like you can't really bake a good cake with rubbish ingredients.
Being handed some signs that he probably hasn't quite agreed with and tried to shoehorn people and make it work.
And a lot more managers would have given up.
Getting rid of him or anything like that would be premature. He's at least deserves the right to try one more season.
I think next season is the year that we judge him on how well he can do, basing it on the fact that he's had one good season and one bad season.